names on the trade block and in free agency, starting with All-NBA, All-Star Bradley Beal in Washington and some other big names too. Come back with us on the WOJ Low.
We give them 5. Trade him, get rid of him. He's so petrified of shoot. Everybody and their grandmother's been telling you to shoot the basketball.
A lot of things are being said. It hasn't come from me. I haven't made any firm decision on what my future will be.
Are you frustrated?
Is the sky blue?
Welcome back to the WOJ and Low Special, presented by Kia.
Welcome back to the WOJ Low offseason extravaganza. We hit the draft now. WOJ, let's go to the biggest veterans that could be moving, maybe moving. Who knows if they're moving? And it has to start in Washington with Bradley Beal, who's entering the last year of his contract, coming off a sensational All-NBA 30-plus points per game season. Where do we stand? Again, we're 4 days before the draft. Like, if they're going to make, anything's going to happen, there's got to be a little clarity soon. Where do we stand with this?
Bradley Beal has not told the Washington Wizards that he would like a trade. He has not told them anything, but he is invested in helping them in free agency. And, he's obviously gotten a chance to talk to Wes Unseld Jr., their new coach. Now, there's still time for that to happen, but the mechanism to do a Bradley Beal trade or any trade of a player of that caliber is to do it before the draft, because you want to do it around draft picks. Once the draft passes, it's a lot harder to do that deal, because hypothetically, if you're going to do it with Golden State, you're going to tell the Warriors who the players are. You would like it 7 and 14 if those players are in it. And so, listen, Bradley Beal has known the timetable of this, that if he wanted it to be moved, if he wasn't going to sign the extension and decided he was ready to move on, that it really needs to get done before draft night. That doesn't mean he can't still do it, but right now the Wizards are preparing for draft night, and they're preparing for free agency, and certainly Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are part of their plans for next season.
You mentioned Golden State. Bradley Beal is in his prime, still way younger than people realize because he came into the league so young. Sensational player, great shooter. It's not just going to be Golden State if it ever happens. I think there will be so many teams that try to get into this. I think Boston makes sense, Miami makes sense, Golden State, Philadelphia. We can go on and on. We can start with the Warriors because you mentioned in the prior segment. To me, if I'm Washington, unless I love James Wiseman, unless I love him, and that's a game changer if I love him. Wiseman, 7. Good pick. Not a great pick. 14. Not an incredible offer to me if I'm the Wizards. You got to give me 2026 unprotected and a swap. And the Warriors, then you could flip, what are the other teams going to offer, right? Like Tyler Hero's value from Miami, I think, is a little lower. They're encumbered with first-round picks. Is Boston going to offer Jaylen Brown? I don't think so. To me, there's not much point in giving up one star for another if you're Boston. So you start to suss out what is the marketplace going to look like. Golden State can reasonably look at it and say, hey, even if you don't love our offer, go get something better.
That's exactly right. And with 1 year left on his deal, Beal has leverage because the team trading for him wants to know that he wants to be there and plans to re-sign. But I also think because of the kind of player and person Bradley Beal is, I think there are teams who might not be in glamour markets who would look and say, if we win, that we could sell Bradley Beal on winning and stay in a situation where we could be really good. That isn't an LA or a New York or a Chicago, Boston, Miami. So I do think the teams out there, there'd be a wide pool. Everybody in the league would love to have Bradley Beal. Listen, he's been very loyal to Washington, and he is.
And it's legit. It's not fake.
He loves it.
And wants to win.
Listen, there are some players who look for reasons to leave and some players who look for reasons to stay. He has always been about finding reasons to want to stay there. And certainly they can sign him to the Supermax next season. There's a giant extension awaiting him if he wants to do it. I think he has legitimately been torn, and he's always been looking for reasons to stay there. He loves that organization. He loves that city. But he wants to win, and he's got to look at the landscape with that roster, that team, and how they can improve themselves to weigh both of those things against each other.
And there's another obvious Beal team we didn't mention. We're going to get to them in a second with separate names. But let's stop for a second. We do need to acknowledge Kawhi Leonard can hit free agency in this offseason. He did just tear his ACL. We don't know when he's coming back. He could miss the whole season. We just need to acknowledge it. Is there any Kawhi Leonard leaving the Clippers possibility? What do we know? Because I don't care if he's injured. Teams will line up to get. We saw with Kevin Durant. If you're a top 5-6 player, teams are going to line up to get you, even if you're going to be out for the season. Maybe. What do we know about Kawhi?
I've gotten no indication that Kawhi Leonard is interested in doing anything but re-signing with the Clippers, rehabbing that injury. And you talk to other teams and agents who might be talking with the Clippers. The way they're proceeding certainly seems to be with Kawhi Leonard in mind. And listen, you don't know until a player signs that contract, but you just said it.
I'm Zach Lowe. This is ESPN insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, the Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions. Congratulations to them. But the offseason starts now. The madness of the draft and free agency is upon us. The draft is in 4 days. Let's get right to it. Sitting at the top are the Detroit Pistons after years in the wilderness, a chance to remake their franchise. Cade Cunningham has been the name all along. Where are we with Detroit as we approach the draft?
Zach, first of all, happy draft week. I think Detroit is getting there on Cade Cunningham as their choice, but they haven't formally made that decision yet. They had Jalen Suggs in for a workout, Jalen Green. They would like to still see Evan Mobley, but they decided at the very beginning of this, we're going to do a process. We're going to make sure we feel Cade Cunningham is the player. I think they will get there this week. Not quite there yet.
Based on what I've heard the same about having a process. I'm still going to be absolutely blown away if we get to the draft and it's anything but
agreed.
Cade Cunningham at number 1 to Detroit with all the guys they picked last year, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes. That's something interesting going on there. Then we get to where the drama really could start, which is Houston at 2. They also have 23 and 24, a lot of ammo, a lot of future picks. Cleveland at 3. And Toronto in a really interesting spot at 4 with Kyle Lowry's free agency. Could go in a lot of different directions there. What kind of trade activity might we see leading up to the draft centered around 2, 3, 4, flipping picks, moving up, moving down? What could we possibly see?
I think what teams expect to happen this week is that Oklahoma City starts knocking at the door, whether that's at 3 with Cleveland, at 2 with Houston. Listen, this is what Sam Presti had in mind when he stockpiled all of these picks from now through 2027, 2028, 3 first-rounders this year, next year, the following year.
Look at all that stuff. We can barely fit it on the screen.
It's incredible. And so, but what it gives Oklahoma City is that if there's a player they target, they really want, like Evan Mobley from USC, they're big, they're 7-footer, and they want to get up in the draft to try to get him at 3, believing that Jalen Green's going 2 to Houston, or get to 2, that they can keep coming at them with assets. But I think Cleveland right now, they've got to come out of this with an impact player. And this is a draft where you might have in another year, there's 3 legitimate number 1 overall picks, maybe 4 if you want to include Suggs, Green, Cunningham, and Mobley. I think it's going to be really hard to get that pick away from Cleveland, who I think if Mobley's there, they take Mobley at 3, and they think they can play him with Jared Allen, play them together at times 2 with the Cavs.
I can tell you this. There are teams toward the top of the draft that are checking their phones, waiting for that Oklahoma City area code to pop up, waiting, thinking maybe, is it going to be the last minute? Is it going to be right before the draft? When Sam Presti comes with number 6, plus a gazillion picks, plus the Godfather offer, and we will see if we get there. And about Cleveland, you mentioned this. Cleveland, that's a team that's under pressure to win next year. Maybe not win big.
Be better.
But they've got to be better. They have Kevin Love's contract. Maybe that's something they might want to try to get off. But that impacts all of these rumblings about Colin Sexton. They're not going to just give Colin Sexton away for a future draft pick. They need to get better next year. And no matter what you think about Colin Sexton, 24 points a game for a team that has a mandate to win 5, 10 more games next year, replacing that with an unknown is a big risk.
I don't see it. I think this is a team that wants, listen, maybe they're not in the playoffs next year, but can they get closer to compete for the play-in tournament? Can it just be a better product? And they've got to come out of this with a potential star NBA player. That's Evan Mobley at 3, assuming that Jalen Green, Cunningham go 1-2. And I don't see a scenario here where they're moving either Garland or Sexton for more picks.
Garland would shock me after the year he had last year.
Right, to get younger. I don't think they're looking to go get younger in a trade. But listen, there's a lot of interest in getting up into the top of the draft. They don't know yet what may be offered to them this week.
The Warriors are a much different place, but the same mandate: win right now. Steph Curry proved to everybody, I am still an MVP caliber player. We got to win now. They have number 7, courtesy of the Timberwolves. Number 14, a really young player in James Wiseman. We know that they're looking around for veteran help using those 2 picks. Have they been able to find anything? It's hard to find someone who's both available and good enough to justify giving up 2 picks, and you may not be in the lottery again for a long time with the talent they have. Have they been able to find anything?
There's one player who I think reaches that criteria for the Warriors, whether it's Weissman, the 7th and 14th pick, other assets. That's Bradley Beal, who is not yet and may not be available prior to the draft or prior to the season. I don't sense that Golden State has a great interest in being involved in the Ben Simmons talk. Certainly at the level of assets it's going to take to try to get that done. And so I think, like a lot of the league, Golden State's going to wait, see how it goes with Bradley Beal. But short of Bradley Beal being available, I expect Golden State to use those picks at 7 and 14 this week.
Based on what we know right now, the likeliest scenario is that Golden State makes picks 7 and 14 and rosters them onto the team. That's based on what we know right now at 1:30, whatever Eastern time. The Bradley Beal situation could simmer one way or another, and that is what we will lead off next segment with. Coming up, the biggest names on the trade block and in free agency, starting with All-NBA, All-Star Bradley Beal in Washington, and some other big names too. Come back with us on the Woj Low off-season special. We're going to